Hello there. Welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, where your imagination can roam even while you rest. Tonight your thoughts may linger in strange places, places where the past refuses to stay buried. I'll guide you through them gently like a soft current carrying you further from the familiar shore. As you settle deeper into your pillow, ask yourself, where are you right now? What time is it where you are listening? Maybe you're at the edge of sleep, or perhaps you pressed play to accompany a late night shift. I'll be here with you through the long stretch of hours. If this journey resonates, let your voice be heard in the quiet digital night. Leave a comment, like or subscribe as though adding one more stone to the circle of listeners gathered around this unseen campfire. But be warned, you probably won't survive this story intact. Not your body, of course, but your certainty. Certainty is fragile, like dried leaves crumbling beneath your hand. What you are about to hear is a gentle unweaving of the fabric you thought you knew. Now imagine yourself standing among vast stones, their presence heavy, their silence ancient. The ground beneath you is cool, yet it thrums with the pulse of centuries. You look up at a wall that rises without mortar. Its stones cut so precisely they cling to each other like pieces of a puzzle. Each block weighs as much as a car, and yet no blade of grass, no slip of paper could wedge between them. You wonder who laid them here, who thought to carve in such a way, to leave no words, no tablets, only this mute geometry. This is where the whispers begin, in stone. Across the world you can find them, in the Andes, where walls climb mountainsides like steps for giants, in the Mediterranean, where foundations seem older than the cities built upon them. Mainstream archaeology will tell you these are the works of ancient hands, clever with stone, patient with chisels, and that is true. The civilizations we know, the Inca, the Greeks, the Egyptians, all worked wonders. Yet here and there, details emerge that do not quite fit the story we tell ourselves. You brush your fingers along a seam, where one stone curves into the next, as though clay was pressed soft against clay. No marks of hammers, no chisels, no straightforward explanation. Scientists still argue whether this was the result of ingenious shaping and endless labor, or whether some technique now lost to us made the impossible practical. And so you wander further. At Pumapunku in Bolivia, you see blocks carved into interlocking shapes, their edges as sharp as if sliced yesterday, their designs almost industrial in precision, yet the site dates back to more than 1,000 years before the Inca. Could those builders have known secrets we have forgotten? Some scholars dismiss the mystery, suggesting these stones are simply evidence of skill, patience and time, but a softer voice inside you wonders whether an unknown civilization whispered knowledge into their ears. The stones do not only stand, they speak, they align. You notice how certain walls face the solstice sunrise, how doorways frame the path of stars, how plazas echo with the movement of the heavens above. These are not accidents. This is a kind of writing, but one without letters, a map etched into architecture, a calendar pressed into rock. Mainstream fact tells you that ancient peoples across continents often align their monuments with celestial events. Stonehenge, Newgrange, Chichen Itza, all are timekeepers written in stone. But then, quietly, a quirky detail arrives. Across oceans, across cultures, across eras, the same fascination with the sky manifests. Different people, different tools, yet they seem to echo each other as though they shared a teacher. Scientists still argue whether these similarities are coincidence born of human curiosity, or evidence of a deeper, older transmission of knowledge. And as you lean back against the chill surface of the wall, you realize the stones are not silent. They murmur, they tell you about forgotten hands, about the weight of memory pressed into matter. You feel it, a sensation like standing inside a cathedral, except no priest built this one, only time. The night air is cool, crickets hum nearby, and you notice the contrast. The living world singing, the stone world brooding. Somewhere, someone is driving through city traffic. Somewhere, a child is waking for a glass of water, and here you are tracing the faintest whispers of civilizations unknown, civilizations that may have walked this earth and vanished like morning mist. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear them, not words, not songs, but intention. A knowledge passed not in scrolls, but in stone. Perhaps you imagine a craftsman guiding your hand, showing you how to place one block against another, how to read the stars for guidance, how to mark time not with clocks but with shadows. And perhaps, just perhaps, you feel that this craftsman is older than any name you know, belonging to a civilization erased yet enduring in whispers. The stones are patient, They wait for you. And tonight as you rest, they may speak louder than dreams. You leave the stones behind and carry their silence with you, as if a fragment of their weight still rests against your chest. Ahead, in the dim glow of candlelight or perhaps in the flicker of a lantern swaying on a ship's deck, maps stretch across parchment and skin. You picture yourself unrolling a scroll, its edges frayed, its ink faded, and yet the shapes upon it are hauntingly familiar. There, a coastline curls, jagged and true. Rivers snake inland. Mountains rise where they should not. Peaks marked in eras when no one you know of had the tools to survey them. You run your finger along a continent's edge, recognizing the familiar outline of South America, except it is drawn centuries before Europeans officially charted its curves. This is no fantasy. Mainstream history tells us that early map makers, especially during the Renaissance, often compiled knowledge from many sources. They stitched together rumors, travelers' accounts, and older charts into ambitious tapestries of geography. The famous Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513, is one such marvel, containing portions of South America and possibly even Antarctica's coastline. Its creator admitted he copied from dozens of older works now lost to time. And here lies the puzzle. How could lost sources capture coastlines hidden beneath ice, or details no known expedition had seen? Scientists still argue whether these were lucky guesses, distortions of imagination, or echoes of older knowledge preserved by peoples whose names we no longer recall. Your hand hovers over another relic, a Polynesian stick chart, delicate and precise. It does not look like a map in the way you know maps, but rather like a lattice of thin rods tied together, seashells marking currents and islands. When held up to the breeze and studied under the stars, it becomes an atlas more powerful than any parchment, a living chart of wind and wave. The people who made it crossed vast stretches of the Pacific Ocean in canoes, guided not by compasses but by sky, swell and memory. And you pause to imagine, what if such traditions, passed from elder to apprentice, stretched back further still? What if the stick charts were only the last echo of a much older cartographic lineage? In your mind you see ancient mariners, long before the Polynesians, long before the Phoenicians, setting sail across oceans we once thought impassable. They sketch coastlines in sand, record currents in knots of rope, and leave their legacy in maps that wander centuries before being inked. Mainstream historians remind you of the fragility of knowledge. Parchment decays, papyrus crumbles, stone tablets weather away, but a map can survive in memory, in oral recitations where coastlines become verses and harbours become refrains. A quirky tale whispers that some maps may even have been etched into the walls of caves or temples, their meanings overlooked by archaeologists who thought them mere decoration. Scientists still argue whether strange carvings found in regions like the Sahara represent astronomical alignments or early cartographic sketches. So you stand there hovering between certainty and speculation, listening to the rustle of paper and the crackle of firelight. Maps are not just drawings, they are stories about where people have been, where they hoped to go, and what they feared to encounter. You fold the parchment gently, as though returning it to a library that no longer exists. The fire burns low, and outside the night is vast. Somewhere above you, constellations drift, guides for sailors, stories for storytellers, landmarks for the lost. And you wonder, are we explorers rediscovering what others once knew, or are we children piecing together fragments of stories too immense for us to hold? The map fades as your eyes grow heavy, but its coastline remains etched in your thoughts, as real as the beat of waves against forgotten shores. The maps curl back into shadows, and you find yourself by a quiet shoreline. The tide slides in and out with a rhythm as old as memory. Close your eyes and you can almost hear voices carried on the water, not of sailors this time, but of storytellers. They gather around fire pits, inside caves, beside riverbanks, and they speak of floods, always floods. You sit among them, listening. The story is never exactly the same. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells of gods who washed the world clean, sparing only one man in a boat. In Greece, the tale is retold with Zeus and a deluge, leaving Deucalion and Pyrrha to repopulate the earth by casting stones behind them. In the Bible, Noah builds an ark and rides above the waters with his family and animals. In India, the sage Manu is warned by a fish, saving humanity by tying his vessel to a horn. In the Americas too, myths ripple with tales of great waters rising and swallowing entire peoples. Mainstream fact acknowledges that many of these myths may echo real floods, the breaching of the Black Sea thousands of years ago, or the sudden rise of coastlines at the end of the last ice age when glaciers collapsed and the seas surged. And it is true, science confirms that shorelines humans once walked are now drowned hundreds of feet beneath the waves. But here is the quirky heartbeat in these tales. They do not only describe water, but civilizations lost to it. Cities swallowed whole, lands erased from maps, knowledge scattered like driftwood. Atlantis is the most famous, a glittering island spoken of by Plato, said to have fallen beneath the sea in a single day and night. Less known, though just as haunting, is Kumari Kandam in Tamil tradition, a vanished continent south of India, where a thriving people once lived before the ocean devoured their home. Scientists still argue whether these myths are fragments of collective memory or archetypes of human imagination. Did ancient storytellers truly remember coastlines collapsing and villages sinking, or did they simply invent the flood as a metaphor, a way of explaining chaos and rebirth? You lean closer to the fire, watching sparks rise into the night sky. Imagine a survivor sitting where you are, trying to explain to their children why the world they knew was gone. How else to tell it but as a great wave, as divine punishment, as the hand of gods? Facts blur with faith, and memory weaves itself into myth. The wind carries the scent of salt water, even though you may be far from the sea. In your mind's eye you walk across a drowned plain, kelp waving where wheat once grew, fish darting through the husks of wooden homes. You run your hand along a pillar that now leans underwater, barnacles clinging where once prayers may have echoed, and for a fleeting moment, you wonder if these stories are not merely cautionary but fragments, fragile shards of civilizations that once thrived then vanished beneath rising tides. Back at the fire, the storytellers continue. Their words ripple like waves themselves, crossing languages and generations. Some scholars suggest these repeated motifs prove nothing more than humanity's shared vulnerability to water. Yet others whisper that such widespread similarity hints at something deeper, that perhaps in the haze of prehistory, an unknown civilization once faced destruction so vast that its echo still lives in our dreams. The flames flicker lower, and the sea beyond murmurs in darkness. Somewhere, perhaps thousands of miles away, another fire burns and another tale is told, the same flood, a different tongue. And you, listening here, begin to feel the weight of stories as heavy as stone walls or forgotten maps. They are all whispers of the same possibility, that what was once alive and luminous has been drowned, leaving only memory to keep it breathing. The night deepens, the waves lap closer, soft and steady, as if reminding you that water does not sleep. And as your own eyelids grow heavy, you carry with you the suspicion that beneath the sea's surface, beneath the tides and myths, lies the blueprint of a world erased. The shoreline fades, and you find yourself walking inland, into forests and across valleys where another kind of whisper lingers. Not in stones this time, nor in maps or myths, but inside you in the blood that flows through your veins. It carries stories far older than the words you speak, traces of encounters with people who left no monuments, no books, only invisible threads woven into your DNA. You imagine a quiet laboratory. Glass vials shimmer under fluorescent light. Machines hum with steady rhythm, and in their circuits swirl secrets carried across tens of thousands of years. Geneticists look into strands of code like astronomers into star fields. Each sequence a constellation of ancestry, and what they find again and again is not simplicity but ghosts. Mainstream fact tells you that when modern humans left Africa tens of thousands of years ago, they met and mingled with other hominins, Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Asia, mysterious groups in Africa whose fossils we have never seen, all left pieces of themselves in us. To this day, your skin, your immune system, even the way your body processes altitude or food can carry echoes of those vanished cousins. But then comes the quirky surprise. Even now, in the age of precision, researchers detect fragments of DNA that match no known population. These fragments are not Neanderthal, not Denisovan, not from any identified lineage. They are signatures of what scientists call ghost populations, entire peoples whose bodies may have vanished, but whose genetic whispers remain inside you. Scientists still argue whether these ghosts represent undiscovered species or simply variations of known groups. But the mystery deepens each year. Some fragments point to ancestors who lived alongside modern humans 50,000 years ago, yet left no bones we can name. Others suggest contacts across distances we once thought impossible. It is as if behind the tapestry of your family tree lies another tree, hidden in shadow, its branches twining invisibly into yours. Imagine you are one of those ancestors, your campfire flickering in the night. You speak in a language never recorded, your children running at your side. You laugh, you eat, you sleep, believing your world will continue forever. Yet within a few generations your people vanish, absorbed or erased. Still a part of you lives, not in stories, not in ruins, but in blood. Centuries later, inside someone like you now. Genetic testing companies today give people maps of ancestry, showing connections across continents. Customers discover unknown cousins, unexpected origins, migrations that do not match family lore. Yet behind those glossy reports are mysteries scientists cannot easily explain, fragments of DNA whose origins remain unnamed. It is as if we carry within us the fingerprints of civilizations we have forgotten, preserved more faithfully than ruins or myths. Mainstream archaeology offers caution. Genetics can be noisy, interpretations flawed. One misplaced assumption, one error in sequencing, and a ghost may prove only a mirage. But even with caution, the truth remains unsettling. You are not a single story. You are a mosaic of forgotten lives. You sit with this thought as if sitting by a river. Each drop of blood carries a current from far upstream, blending streams so old they blur into mist. You close your eyes, and in that darkness you sense them, silent companions who walk beside you, though you cannot see their faces. Perhaps they carved stones you touched in the Andes. Perhaps they sang myths of floods you heard by the sea. Perhaps they drew coastlines you traced on maps. And perhaps they left no visible trace at all, save for a quiet signature hiding in your chromosomes. The lab lights dim in your mind, replaced by starlight overhead. You tilt your head back, hearing your own pulse echo like distant drums. In its rhythm beats a story written not on parchment, not in stone, but in you. And as sleep brushes closer, you realize the ghosts are not gone. They are here, as alive as the breath you just took. The forest grows quiet, and you follow a narrow path that winds toward open plains. Here the air is dry, and dust clings to your feet as you walk. You begin to imagine the sound of hooves, the creak of wooden carts, the low murmur of voices speaking in dozens of tongues. A caravan stretches before you, endless as the horizon. Men and women carrying goods across distances so vast they seem impossible. You notice what they carry: bags of turquoise mined from deserts thousands of miles away, lapis lazuli, deep blue and flecked with gold, found only in the heart of Afghanistan, but discovered in the ornaments of ancient Egypt. Seeds of crops that appear suddenly far from their native soils, and metals, techniques for smelting and alloying that appear in one culture, vanish and reappear centuries later in another. Mainstream history affirms this. Ancient trade routes crisscrossed the old world long before the Silk Road. Long before written records, people carried obsidian blades from Anatolia, amber beads from the Baltic, shells from the Indian Ocean. Archaeologists find them in burials, in temples, in layers of soil where they seem out of place yet undeniable. This is the fabric of human connection, woven into the landscape itself. Yet the quirky detail that unsettles you is how some of these exchanges appear too early, too sudden, as though a hidden hand nudged them into place. In South America, coca leaves and nicotine residues appear in Egyptian mummies. How could this be, when the Atlantic was thought uncrossed until the voyages of Columbus? Some argue contamination or errors in testing. Others wonder if forgotten seafarers made journeys that never reached the page of history. Scientists still argue whether such anomalies represent proof of ancient transoceanic contact, or are simply artifacts of misinterpretation. But the whispers remain. Gems in the wrong soil, grains growing where no ancestor could have planted them, pottery styles echoing each other across oceans. These are threads that tug at you, pulling you into the possibility of networks far older and wider than we have dared to imagine. You picture yourself walking alongside the caravan. The sun beats down, the smell of dust and sweat and spice fills the air. At night, fires flicker across the dunes, and traders sit in circles, passing goods, passing songs, passing knowledge. It is not only the objects that travel, it is the stories, the recipes, the healing herbs, the way to shape bronze or cut stone. Knowledge itself is a commodity, one not always preserved in writing but carried in memory, in the lips of those who journey. The forest grows quiet, and you follow a narrow path that winds toward open plains. Here the air is dry, and dust clings to your feet as you walk. You begin to imagine the sound of hooves, the creak of wooden carts, the low murmur of voices speaking in dozens of tongues. A caravan stretches before you, endless as the horizon. Men and women carrying goods across distances so vast they seem impossible. You notice what they carry: bags of turquoise mined from deserts thousands of miles away, lapis lazuli, deep blue and flecked with gold, found only in the heart of Afghanistan, but discovered in the ornaments of ancient Egypt. Seeds of crops that appear suddenly far from their native soils, and metals, techniques for smelting and alloying that appear in one culture, vanish and reappear centuries later in another. Mainstream history affirms this. Ancient trade routes crisscrossed the old world long before the Silk Road. Long before written records, people carried obsidian blades from Anatolia, amber beads from the Baltic, shells from the Indian Ocean. Archaeologists find them in burials, in temples, in layers of soil where they seem out of place yet undeniable. This is the fabric of human connection, woven into the landscape itself. Yet the quirky detail that unsettles you is how some of these exchanges appear too early, too sudden, as though a hidden hand nudged them into place. In South America, coca leaves and nicotine residues appear in Egyptian mummies. How could this be when the Atlantic was thought uncrossed until the voyages of Columbus? Some argue contamination or errors in testing. Others wonder if forgotten seafarers made journeys that never reached the page of history. Scientists still argue whether such anomalies represent proof of ancient transoceanic contact, or are simply artifacts of misinterpretation. But the whispers remain. Gems in the wrong soil, grains growing where no ancestor could have planted them, pottery styles echoing each other across oceans. These are threads that tug at you, pulling you into the possibility of networks far older and wider than we have dared to imagine. You picture yourself walking alongside the caravan. The sun beats down. The smell of dust and sweat and spice fills the air. At night, fires flicker across the dunes, and traders sit in circles, passing goods, passing songs, passing knowledge. It is not only the objects that travel, it is the stories, the recipes, the healing herbs, the way to shape bronze or cut stone. Knowledge itself is a commodity, one not always preserved in writing but carried in memory, in the lips of those who journey. And so you wonder, what if behind these visible exchanges lies a deeper current? What if some unknown civilization now vanished set these roots in motion, teaching distant peoples how to connect long before they were ready to write it down? The desert wind shifts. You think of amber found in Tutankhamun's tomb that may have originated in the Baltic. You think of silk threads discovered in mummies buried thousands of years before the Silk Road formally opened. Each example may have an explanation, but together they weave a pattern that feels deliberate, as though the world has always been smaller than we believed. The caravan fades and you walk through ruins. Walls crumble but shards of pottery remain. You pick up a fragment decorated with spirals that remind you of another shard you saw continents away. Patterns in dust, motifs repeated across oceans. Did chance create such echoes, or were they carried by hands that once traversed seas and deserts we thought impassable? Mainstream archaeologists caution against leaps of imagination. Parallel invention, they say. Human minds create similar solutions to similar problems. Perhaps, yet you cannot help but notice how often these solutions align not only in function but in form, in style, in artistry. A rhythm hums beneath it all, faint yet persistent. You sit at the edge of an ancient trade road, now silent, overgrown with grass. You close your eyes and hear the ghosts of commerce, wheels grinding, bells chiming, camels snorting, the laughter of children who will never know that they are part of something vast. And you realize that trade is not only the exchange of objects but the weaving of humanity itself, a network invisible yet binding, stretching back into shadows where names are lost. The night deepens and the road is empty, yet you feel it still, the faint vibration of footsteps, the glimmer of turquoise, the whisper of silk in the wind. It is as though the earth itself remembers the caravan long after it is gone. And tonight, as you drift, you carry with you the thought that these routes, these exchanges, may have been guided by hands we no longer see, shaping the world you know in ways you cannot yet measure. And perhaps tomorrow, when you sip your coffee or hold a pen, you will wonder where the beans, where the ink, where the very shapes of your letters truly came from. Were they born in one place or carried to you across centuries of forgotten trade, whispered into existence by civilizations now unnamed? The caravan does not stop. It continues forever, dust swirling behind it, knowledge shifting silently between worlds. And you, for a moment, are part of its march. The road dissolves into sand, and the desert opens into sky, vast, unbroken, endless. You tilt your head back and see the stars pour across the heavens, a silver river gliding above you. The caravan is gone, the noise of trade is hushed, and now only the quiet pulse of the cosmos remains. The ancients would have seen this same sky, though perhaps with clearer eyes, less distracted by glowing screens and electric lamps. They did not look up casually, they looked up to survive. They looked up to know. Mainstream fact reminds you that nearly every ancient culture built its life around the stars. Farmers needed to know when to sow and when to reap. Sailors needed to find their way across oceans. Priests needed to align rituals with celestial cycles. From the Nile to the Yangtze, from the Mississippi to the Andes, the heavens provided a clock so vast it could outlast any empire. Yet when you walk among ancient ruins, you notice something that feels like more than practicality. Great stones rise in patterns that mirror constellations. Passageways line up with solstices. Entire cities are laid out as if reflecting the sky onto the earth. Chichen Itza's pyramid casts a serpent's shadow on the equinox. Newgrange in Ireland channels the rising sun through a long corridor on the shortest day of the year. The Great Pyramids of Giza, some argue, are aligned with Orion's belt. These are not coincidences. They are acts of intention, a language carved into land itself. Now here comes the quirky surprise. Even where no contact is supposed to have existed, the same obsessions emerge. Ancient Polynesians steered by the stars across vast oceans, their stick charts mapping swells and constellations with a precision Western sailors would not equal for centuries. In sub-Saharan Africa, the Dogon people tell stories of Sirius and its hidden companion star, Sirius B, a fact that modern science confirmed with telescopes only in the 19th century. How, you wonder, could stories hold truths that science only later rediscovered? Scientists still argue whether such knowledge was coincidence, metaphor, or something passed down from much older observers. Were the Dogon tales about Sirius B a case of ancient astronomical inheritance, or the result of modern contamination from outsiders? Did the builders of Giza truly intend to map Orion, or is that a pattern humans imposed later, eager for symmetry? Still, the stars shine regardless of our debates. You lie on your back and feel the enormity of them. Imagine an ancient astronomer wrapped in animal hides lying on cold stone counting the pulses of stars. Imagine another 1,000 miles away doing the same, a Maya priest, a Chinese scholar, a Babylonian scribe, all of them different, and yet all of them guided by the same glittering dome. And here is where the thought takes root. What if there was a teacher long ago who whispered the same lessons to all? What if the knowledge of solstice alignments, of star maps, of cosmic cycles came not from isolated invention but from a deeper, older tradition? A tradition carried, perhaps, by an unknown civilization that looked at the sky with eyes wiser than ours. The sky has always been the most reliable archive. Stone can crumble, papyrus can burn, but the stars return each night. They are unerasable. To carve knowledge into their patterns is to ensure survival of meaning, long after civilizations vanish. You think of the Nazca lines, massive geoglyphs across the desert floor in Peru, whose designs can only be seen from above. Animals, spirals, lines stretching to horizons. Some scholars argue they are astronomical calendars, giant markers pointing to constellations or solstice sunrises. Others claim they are ritual pathways. Scientists still argue, their voices loud against the silence of the desert. You close your eyes and hear that silence. It is vast but not empty. It hums with memory, with intention, and you realize that for those who came before, looking at the sky was not merely science but communion. The heavens were alive, speaking in cycles, guiding their crops, their journeys, their myths. The Milky Way was a river, the moon a calendar, the sun the pulse of time itself. Your breath slows. You imagine lying among the stones of a forgotten temple, dawn approaching. A shaft of light creeps down a narrow corridor, touching an altar that has waited through endless nights. The alignment is perfect, precise, intentional. It is not a trick of chance. Someone measured, someone planned, someone aligned their lives with the cosmos. And as you listen to the silence, you begin to feel the continuity. The same stars above them shine above you now. You too are part of this calendar, this great wheel turning. Perhaps you do not notice. Perhaps your city lights drown it out, but it is there, steady and indifferent, patient as stone. The ancients looked up because they had to. You look up now because you want to. And between those two impulses, perhaps, is the bridge where forgotten civilizations may have walked, passing knowledge from their fires to ours, etching meaning into constellations so that one day, even as they vanished, their whispers would remain. The sky deepens, stars shimmering like cold embers. You exhale, and for a moment you feel weightless, as though floating among them, and in that stillness you wonder whether tonight's sky is not only for you but also a message from hands we can no longer see, reaching across centuries to remind you that nothing is ever truly lost if it is written in the heavens. The stars slowly fade as dawn brushes the horizon, and with the pale light you notice something lying in the dust at your feet. A fragment of metal, cold and sharp, too finely shaped to belong to the stones around it. You bend down, lift it, and turn it in your hand. Its edges are cut at right angles, cleaner than a simple stone tool, more exact than chance flaking could ever produce. You run your thumb along it, and a question stirs. How old could this be, and how could it exist where it does? Mainstream archaeology reassures you that most tools can be explained. Humanity's timeline of technology, from stone to bronze to iron to steel, is well mapped, and yet scattered across layers of earth, there are objects that do not quite fit. You think of the Antikythera mechanism pulled from a Greek shipwreck more than 2,000 years old. Its gears and dials reveal astronomical movements with mechanical precision, so advanced it would not be matched for over a millennium. Historians confirm it is real that Greek mathematicians and craftsmen were capable of such marvels. But still the question remains, why only one? Why not a lineage of machines leading naturally into the future? Instead, the mechanism seems to flare up like a lantern in the dark, then vanish, leaving centuries of silence behind. And there are stranger stories still, tales of out-of-place artifacts that appear to leapfrog their era. Hammerheads embedded in stone said to be millions of years old, tiny figurines of airplanes unearthed in Colombia, their shapes eerily reminiscent of modern aircraft, iron pillars in India that resist corrosion far beyond what simple smelting should allow. Each has an explanation perhaps, or at least a debate. Contamination, coincidence, misdating. Scientists still argue, their voices divided between skepticism and wonder. But for you, holding this cold shard in your hand, the mystery is more intimate. You picture the craftsman who shaped it, his workshop, his fire, the sound of hammer on metal, the way his children might have watched with wide eyes. Did he belong to a known civilization, or was he part of one now erased, his people's innovations scattered like seeds across time? The air around you is heavy with silence. You look out over the ruins, and suddenly every broken stone seems suspect. Was it once part of something greater? Did these walls hold machines, mechanisms, tools beyond our imagining? And if so, where are they now? Mainstream fact tells you that much of human innovation is lost, not through malice but through fragility. Wood rots, iron rusts, clay shatters, fire consumes libraries in hours. Whole technologies could vanish without leaving a trace. 1,000 years from now, what would remain of your own age? Plastics, perhaps, glass, the skeletons of skyscrapers, but circuits, code, the voice in which I speak to you now, perhaps only whispers. And so you look again at the shard in your hand and imagine entire toolkits, entire sciences, reduced to fragments waiting for rediscovery. Civilizations may not fall because they lack genius, but because genius is fleeting and memory fragile. You walk further and discover another relic half buried in earth, a stone bowl, yet carved so thin its surface rings like crystal when struck. You set it down gently, unsettled by its perfection. Mainstream history offers examples of advanced stonework from Egypt, from Mesopotamia, from the Indus Valley, but scattered among them are pieces that feel too perfect, as though made not by hand but by methods we no longer possess. Did lathes exist where none should? Did techniques of shaping vanish like smoke? Scientists still argue whether these are the results of extraordinary skill with simple tools or evidence of techniques that should not have been possible in their time. The dawn grows brighter, and the relics around you cast long shadows. You stand among them surrounded by silence and realize how fragile the chain of knowledge truly is. Lose one generation of teachers, one library, one city, and the next must begin again from near zero. Yet sometimes, scattered across the ruins, you find hints that not everything was lost, that some knowledge survived the flood, the fire, the collapse, and waits now for you to stumble upon it. You hold the shard tightly and close your eyes. You imagine the unknown craftsman guiding your hand, showing you how to strike the metal, how to listen to the song of the tool as it takes shape. You can almost hear him whisper, patient, instructing, reminding you that nothing is ever truly new, only rediscovered. When you open your eyes, the relic lies cold again in your palm. The sun climbs higher, the air warms, and you understand why myths speak of gifts from the gods, fire, metal, craft. For when knowledge appears too soon, too sudden, too perfect, it feels less like invention and more like inheritance. An inheritance from someone who walked here long before you, someone whose story is now almost gone. The shard slips from your hand into the soil again, as if eager to return to the earth. You brush the dust from your palms, stand and look once more at the sky. The stars may have kept the memory, but the earth hides its own fragments of tools, echoes of hands, the whispers of civilizations who may have been far more advanced than we dare to believe. And tonight, when you lie in the quiet dark, you may feel it again, that strange certainty that the tools you use each day, the cup you drink from, the light you switch on, the phone you hold, may not be the first of their kind. They may be shadows of older inventions carried through time like faint embers refusing to die. The fragment of metal fades into dust, and soon you find yourself tracing your hand along a wall, not of neat bricks but of massive stones fitted together like a puzzle too complex for a single lifetime. Each block towers over you, some the size of small rooms, and yet they cling to each other so tightly that even a sheet of paper would struggle to slide between them. The wall is silent, but its silence is not empty. It feels like the breath of an old teacher, steady, patient, waiting for you to notice. Mainstream archaeology tells you these are the works of extraordinary builders. Inca masons in the Andes, Greek craftsmen in the Mediterranean, Cyclopean fortifications scattered across ancient landscapes. Their skill was real, their labour immense, their dedication unmatched, but still the details nag at you. Edges curved with precision as though stone had once flowed like clay. Corners angled with such sharpness you'd swear they were cut with machines. Walls leaning into earthquakes yet never falling. You walk deeper into these ruins and arrive at Sacsayhuaman above Cusco, where polygonal blocks rise into tiers that defy both time and gravity. Some weigh more than 100 tons, dragged from quarries miles away. Mainstream fact assures you that levers, ramps and human determination made it possible, and yet the quirky thought persists. Why such complexity? Why such mass when simpler methods would have sufficed? Was the wall meant only to protect, or also to remember? Scientists still argue whether such stonework represents genius born of necessity, or the survival of techniques now lost. Some suggest heating and softening stone with chemicals, others the use of advanced knowledge forgotten when civilizations collapsed. None of these claims have been proven, yet the puzzle endures. Whispering at the edge of what we know, you press your palm against the cool surface, and feel a kind of pulse. Not literal, but in your imagination, as though the wall is humming softly with memory. Perhaps it remembers the hands that shaped it, the chants of workers pulling together, the celebrations of priests who declared the wall sacred. Perhaps it remembers something more, a knowledge too large to fit inside paper records, left instead in stone itself. Mainstream history notes how often such walls align with the heavens. Doorways frame solstice sunrises. Plazas echo the shape of constellations. The builders were not only architects but astronomers, embedding the sky into the earth. You glance upward where the last faint stars fade into dawn, and then back to the stones, noticing how they echo the same patterns. It is as if the builders wanted to remind you what is above is also below, and yet the whispers grow stranger. Across oceans in far corners of the world, you see echoes of the same style. Cyclopean walls in Greece, polygonal masonry in Italy, vast stone platforms in Polynesia, separated by thousands of miles and entire cultures, yet sharing uncanny resemblances. Is it coincidence? Is it convergent invention? Human minds finding the same solution to the same problem? Or is it inheritance, carried from one forgotten source to many? Scientists still argue, but you cannot help wondering whether the stones themselves hold the answer, if only we knew how to read them. You kneel at the base of the wall and notice tiny carvings, not grand inscriptions, but subtle marks, tool lines, scratches that fade into weathered surfaces. To most they are meaningless, the leftovers of construction. But what if? To those who built, they were part of the language, not letters but gestures, not sentences but signatures left in the way a seam curves, in the way one block tucks into another. Perhaps the entire wall is a text, but one written in geometry instead of words. You step back, letting your eyes unfocus, and suddenly you sense patterns, diagonal seams meeting at intentional angles, tiers bending as if choreographed. A quiet rhythm rises in your mind, as though you are hearing not just architecture but music, chords frozen into rock. The wall sings without sound, and you are its audience. Mainstream archaeologists might smile at your imagination, reminding you of how easily humans impose patterns where none exist. But the human tendency to seek meaning in pattern is itself a truth of history, and who can say that the masons did not mean for you to see this music, to feel it centuries later with your fingertips? You wander further into the labyrinth of stones, tracing seams, leaning against blocks, listening to silence. The sun climbs higher, shadows shift, and the wall changes tone. In the morning it seems solemn, now it seems watchful. At night perhaps it would glow with moonlight and feel almost alive. This is no simple fortification. This is memory embedded in the bones of the earth. And as you walk, you realize how fragile your own walls are, bricks that crumble, glass that shatters, steel that rusts. But these stones have endured for millennia, through earthquakes, through storms, through the fall of every empire that claimed them. The masons built not only for themselves, but for the future. For you. For this moment when your palm rests against their work and you listen. The wind sighs, carrying the smell of dust and grass. Somewhere far away a bird calls, and the sound echoes faintly against the wall. You close your eyes and imagine the voices of those who built it. They are not gone. They are here, in every seam, every joint, every impossible corner. And tonight, when you close your eyes, you may find yourself back here wandering among stones that hum with forgotten intelligence. Stones that resist time itself, stones that seem to wait patiently for you to understand their language. A language without vowels or consonants. A language written in weight, in angle, in silence. The echoes of stone walls. The walls recede into shadow as you wander further until you reach a cliff face carved with marks unlike anything you've seen before. They are not pictures of animals or depictions of gods, not simple tallies of harvests or victories. They are symbols, sharp, geometric, curling into patterns that seem like writing, yet refuse to yield their meaning. You run your fingers along one, and the grooves are deep, purposeful, deliberate. They whisper of a language without a tongue. Mainstream fact reminds you that writing emerged independently in several places. Cuneiform in Mesopotamia, hieroglyphs in Egypt, symbols in the Indus Valley, characters in China and perhaps early scripts in Mesoamerica. Each arose from the need to record trade, law, prayer or story. Yet scattered across the world are marks that fit no known alphabet, scripts that scholars still cannot read, languages that resist every attempt at translation. The Indus Valley script is one such silence. Thousands of seals and tablets covered in tiny carvings, some no larger than a fingernail, yet no Rosetta Stone to unlock them. Scholars debate whether it is even true writing or merely symbolic shorthand. Still, the seals repeat patterns suggesting grammar, rhythm, meaning. But what meaning? Scientists still argue whether the people of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro recorded complex language or left behind nothing more than abstract tokens. And then there are the Rongorongo tablets of Easter Island. Wood carvings with glyphs arranged in alternating lines. They seem like script, structured and intentional, yet no one can read them. The people who carved them left no clear key, and when their culture was disrupted, the thread was cut. A language written, but voiceless. Quirky rumours whisper of other undeciphered markings. Symbols carved into rocks in the Sahara, linear scripts in the Americas, spirals etched on European megaliths. Some are dismissed as decoration, others as tally marks, but the possibility lingers. What if these are fragments of languages that belonged to civilizations now erased? Languages whose voices were silenced, yet whose marks remain like fossils of thought. You stand in front of the cliff face and let your gaze drift. The symbols seem to dance, rearranging themselves when you don't look directly at them. You imagine a speaker from that forgotten world, standing here, chanting as their hand carved the stone. Perhaps each groove carried sound, tone, meaning. Perhaps the entire cliff was a library, and you, centuries later, can only press your hand against it, knowing the sound is gone. Mainstream historians remind you how fragile language is. A tongue can vanish in a generation if its speakers fall silent. Across the modern world, languages die every few weeks, swallowed by larger ones. Yet stone holds on longer. The marks you see are survivors, carrying the ghost of speech, even when no ear can hear it. You kneel and study the base of the carvings. Some lines overlap as though layered by generations. Some marks are faint, worn by weather, but still insist they were once alive. You cannot read them, but you feel them, and perhaps that is what they wanted, not translation but memory. You close your eyes and imagine their words rising again. A priest intoning prayers, a trader recording exchanges, a child practicing symbols with a stick in wet clay. You hear the murmur of syllables that no living mouth has spoken in thousands of years, carried on the wind, blending with your own breath. For a moment you are part of that vanished language. Scientists still argue whether we will ever unlock these lost scripts. Some believe computers may one day decode them, finding statistical patterns no human eye can perceive. Others argue that without a bilingual key, their meanings may remain forever sealed. Yet here, before the silent wall, you feel that even without understanding, the presence of the marks is enough. They are proof that someone lived, thought, dreamed and tried to preserve themselves against forgetting. You open your eyes and the sun has shifted, casting shadows across the grooves. The symbols glow as though alive, as if reminding you that silence is not emptiness. Even without sound, they continue to speak, though their language is one of mystery. As you turn away, you realize how many of your own words are written in fragile forms, in glowing pixels, in magnetic code, in books that can burn. What will remain 1,000 years from now? Perhaps not the words themselves, but the traces, the grooves, the echoes carved into stone. And tonight, when you close your eyes, you may find yourself standing once again before that cliff, the unreadable marks glowing softly in moonlight. A language without a tongue, still whispering in silence, still asking to be remembered. The cliff of unreadable marks fades into mist, and as you walk forward you realize the mist is not fog but breath. The breath of stories whispered across countless generations. The ground beneath you is uneven, ridges rising like the bones of an ancient land, and then just beyond the horizon, you hear voices telling tales of places that no longer exist. Tales of lost kingdoms, drowned continents, vanished cities. They are myths, yes, but myths have a way of mapping real places. Mainstream fact reminds you that stories have always doubled as maps. Polynesian navigators memorized chants describing islands in sequence, their verses acting as compasses. Norse sagas mention coastlines that later explorers confirmed. Even Homer's Odyssey, once dismissed as pure legend, contains references to real geography woven into its poetry. Myths may stretch truth, but they rarely invent it entirely. You sit beside a fire in this imagined world and listen. One elder tells of Atlantis, a shining island beyond the Pillars of Hercules, where temples glimmered with orichalcum and knowledge pulsed like a living flame, until one night it sank beneath the sea. Another whispers of Lemuria, a vast land connecting India and Madagascar, once home to a people now erased. Far to the north, a bard speaks of Hyperborea, a land of eternal sunlight hidden beyond icy winds. In the south, Tamil songs recall Kumari Kandam, an entire continent devoured by the ocean. These are myths. They contradict, they blur, they shift with the tongues that tell them, and yet the quirky surprise is how often their details align with geology. We know that sea levels rose drastically after the last ice age, swallowing coastlines where humans once lived. We know that entire land bridges, Doggerland in Europe, Sunderland in Southeast Asia, Beringia between Asia and America, disappeared beneath the waves. People once walked there. They hunted, they built, they sang. When the waters rose, they left, and what remained was memory, carried in stories that grew into myths. Scientists still argue whether tales like Atlantis are pure allegory or distant echoes of real events. Was Plato inventing a parable about hubris and power, or was he preserving a fragment of history heard from older mouths? Was Kumari Kandam a symbolic tale of cultural loss, or a memory of rising seas swallowing ancient Tamil lands? The debates continue, sharp as chisels against stone, yet never striking certainty. You lean closer to the fire and imagine survivors of a drowned city. They stumble onto new shores, soaked and trembling. They tell their children about the land that vanished, the temples gone, the fields lost forever. Those children tell theirs, and in time the story becomes myth, no longer geography, but morality. warning, legend. Yet beneath the exaggeration, the skeleton of truth remains. A land once lived upon, now lost. Mainstream historians trace flood myths across hundreds of cultures. In Mesopotamia, the story of Utnapishtim saving life from divine waters. In China, tales of Yu the Great taming catastrophic floods. Among the Maya, stories of deluges that reset creation itself. Myths repeat because water repeats, rising and falling, reshaping coasts. But perhaps they also repeat because they all remember the same age. A time when seas surged and civilizations were washed away. You close your eyes and see maps overlaying one another. Myth over geology, story over science. Atlantis becomes Santorini's eruption. Kumari Kandam becomes the drowned shelf of the Indian Ocean. Hyperborea becomes the Arctic before ice. Myths may not be literal, but they are not meaningless. They are atlases of memory, blurred but not erased. And here is the unsettling thought. If myths preserve truths about lands drowned 10,000 years ago, what else might they preserve? Stories of visitors from other continents before history books admit contact. Stories of cities far older than archaeology can yet confirm. Stories of teachers, bringers of knowledge who vanished but left echoes behind. You open your eyes and the fire is low. The storytellers around you are quiet, their faces glowing with embers. One hums a song low and slow about a river that once flowed where desert now lies. Another draws with a stick in the dirt, tracing shapes of mountains that no longer exist. Their voices blend with the crackle of flames until you cannot tell where memory ends and imagination begins. The night sky overhead reflects in their eyes. You realize that for them, myths were not idle stories told to pass time. They were maps, survival guides, compasses. To forget them would mean losing the way. To remember them meant carrying the past into the future. Scientists still argue whether humans exaggerate the past into grandeur, perhaps. But as you listen to the voices, you feel that even exaggeration can be truth in disguise. A story about a kingdom swallowed by the sea may not be fact in detail, but it is fact in essence. The sea does swallow, and civilizations do fall. You stretch out on the ground beside the fire, feeling the warmth seep into your bones. The voices fade, replaced by the steady rhythm of waves you cannot see but know are there. Myths become maps, maps become memories, memories become dreams. And as you drift, you understand. Even the stories you tell yourself tonight about ancient stones, forgotten caravans, ghostly DNA, may one day be retold as myths. And someone far in the future may sit by a fire, whispering your words, using them as a compass to imagine the world that was. The embers of the storyteller's fire fade behind you as you wander deeper into valleys where mist hangs low and streams carve silver ribbons between ridges. Here the world feels hushed, almost untouched. Birds call in distant treetops, and a wind sighs gently through grasses that have bent under countless seasons. It is in such hidden corners of the earth that survival sometimes lingers, carrying memories that books have forgotten. You pause, for it feels as though someone is watching, not with suspicion, but with a quiet patience, as though waiting for you to notice. Mainstream fact tells you that isolated communities often preserve ancient traditions long after surrounding civilizations have changed. In mountain villages of the Caucasus, songs echo scales no longer heard elsewhere. In remote valleys of the Andes, weaving patterns tell stories older than written chronicles. In the Himalayas, small groups pass down myths of celestial visitors, stories untouched by the spread of empire or religion. Such pockets are living time capsules, their practices threads tying the present to forgotten eras. You picture a family in such a place. Their hut is simple, their fire steady, their stories vivid. A child watches an elder prepare a ritual, using tools made in the same way for centuries. To outsiders it looks like quaint tradition, but to them it is survival of identity, the echo of ancestors speaking through hands and breath. The quirky truth is that sometimes these small acts preserve fragments of entire lost civilizations, a weaving design resembling constellations seen from vanished coastlines, a recipe recalling plants once grown on drowned land, a dance pattern echoing ancient rituals no longer performed elsewhere. Scientists still argue whether such cultural survivals represent direct links to unknown civilizations or coincidences born from human creativity. Is a spiral motif in a Peruvian textile a memory of a lost star cult, or simply a pleasing design? Is a drumbeat in West Africa a survival of pre-empire rhythms or a spontaneous creation repeated by chance? The debate circles endlessly, but as you watch the family by their fire, the answer feels less important than the continuity itself. You walk into a clearing where elders gather at dusk. They chant in a language barely known outside their valley. Each syllable feels deliberate, measured, and though you cannot understand, you sense rhythm, pattern, meaning. Perhaps it is prayer, perhaps instruction, perhaps memory disguised as song. In this place, the unknown civilization you seek does not lie in buried ruins or vanished maps. It lives in voices that never stopped singing. Mainstream history provides examples of such endurance. The San people of southern Africa carry myths that may date back tens of thousands of years, recounting animals and landscapes their ancestors saw when glaciers still gripped the north. Australian Aboriginal songlines map the land in ways so precise they have guided people for over 60,000 years. Polynesian navigators, even after centuries of suppression, revived their oceanic knowledge by listening to the last elders who remembered. Knowledge outlasts empire if it finds a hidden refuge. But there is something uncanny in these survivals. You notice how often they align with mysteries we cannot fully explain. Legends of floods matching geological events, songs describing stars invisible to the naked eye, ritual dances echoing the motions of celestial bodies. Coincidence or evidence that memory has longer legs than we think? The quirky surprise arrives in the form of tools. In some remote places, villagers use techniques baffling even to modern engineers. A potter spins clay with motions no textbooks describe, producing shapes identical to shards found in prehistoric ruins. A farmer breeds crops resistant to local pests using methods that seem to mirror modern genetics. These are not inventions of the present, but inheritances carried silently through centuries of isolation. You kneel by a river where women wash clothes with stones polished smooth. Their laughter mixes with the rush of water, and one of them hums a tune older than any cathedral hymn. The sun glints on ripples, and in those ripples you see time folding, the present carrying the past without realizing it. These women do not claim to preserve an unknown civilization, but their every gesture whispers fragments of it. Scientists still argue whether cultural survivals prove continuity or simply parallel invention. Yet here, listening, you sense that memory can survive in forms so subtle we almost overlook them. The way a net is knotted, the angle of a roof beam, the lullaby sung to a child. These are not accidents. They are messages written not in books but in breath, in hand, in song. As twilight deepens, the valley glows with firelight. Children chase sparks into the dark. Elders sit wrapped in shawls, and the mountains loom as silent witnesses. You realize that perhaps unknown civilizations are not entirely lost. They survive in quiet places, in rituals overlooked, in languages rarely recorded. Their cities may be gone, their walls tumbled, but their essence hums in valleys like this, hidden yet alive. You lie back on the grass and gaze at the stars above the mountains. They shine as they did when those forgotten people first sang, first carved, first dreamed. You wonder how much of their voice flows through you without your knowing. Perhaps in the way you pause to listen, or the way you hum absent-mindedly. You are carrying them too. The night closes around you, soft and cool. The fires dim, but the valley remains alive with echoes. And as your breath slows, you feel it. Civilizations do not die. They change shape, they hide, they whisper. And sometimes, in hidden valleys, they wait for you to hear them. The valley fades into silence, and soon you find yourself in a dim hall lined with shelves, drawers and glass cases. It smells faintly of dust and polish, the air heavy with age. You realize you are in a museum, though not the bright galleries where crowds gather. No, this is a back room, a storage chamber where forgotten relics sleep. The light is faint, a single bulb humming overhead, casting shadows that reach across rows of boxes. Each drawer holds something once dug from the earth, tagged, catalogued, and then left here to wait. Mainstream fact tells you that museums everywhere have vast collections hidden from public view. For every artifact displayed in a case, thousands more lie in storage. Shards of pottery, fragments of bone, tools, ornaments, idols. Archaeologists label them, classify them, and sometimes never return. They remain silent, unseen by the public, gathering dust while history continues to be written without them. You reach for one drawer and slide it open. Inside rests a small stone carved into a shape you cannot quite name. It looks almost mechanical, as if it were a gear or a spindle. The label is faded, misfiled. perhaps placed here a century ago. You lift it gently, turning it in your palm, and you wonder, was this truly understood when it was found, or was it dismissed because it did not fit? Here lies the quirky truth. The world's museums hold thousands of such oddities, artifacts that don't easily align with the neat timelines of history. Some are objects of unknown purpose, some found in strata too old for their design, some resembling tools of a sophistication we do not expect. The Antikythera mechanism itself lay forgotten in a museum drawer for decades before scholars recognized its complexity. How many other wonders lie waiting, unrecognized, miscatalogued, mislabeled as miscellaneous? Scientists still argue whether such artifacts should be interpreted boldly or cautiously. Most prefer caution, fearing sensational claims that collapse under scrutiny. Yet in that caution, many items linger in obscurity, never fully studied, their potential stories locked away. Some researchers whisper that hidden in these drawers may be the real evidence of civilizations older, wider, or stranger than we imagine. You slide another drawer open, rows of clay tablets. Their inscriptions faded but unmistakably purposeful. Some resemble known cuneiform, yet others display marks you don't recognize. Were they dismissed as crude scribbles, or are they fragments of a script no one has yet deciphered? You picture the archaeologist who uncovered them, perhaps tired, perhaps overwhelmed by too many finds. A quick label, unclassified, and into the drawer it went, sealed away from the world. The quiet is overwhelming. You hear only the faint hum of the light bulb and your own breath. In this stillness, you realize that the forgotten artifacts here are like voices cut off mid-sentence. They spoke, but no one listened long enough. They wait for someone, maybe you, to lean close and hear again. Mainstream history acknowledges that mistakes happen in cataloguing. Excavations yield so many fragments that it's impossible to study them all. Items are boxed, stored, and sometimes lost within the very institutions meant to preserve them. Entire discoveries resurface decades later when a new researcher reopens an old crate. It is not conspiracy but human limitation, and yet the result is the same: silence where there might have been revelation. You imagine a curator walking through this hall centuries ago, lantern in hand, glancing at boxes without truly seeing. Perhaps one box holds the key to an unknown civilization, its fragments overlooked because they seemed ordinary. Perhaps another contains a map, a carving, a tool too advanced for its time. They sleep in plain sight, invisible because no one expects to find them. The quirky detail presses on you. Even today, museum basements are filled with unopened crates from expeditions 100 years old. Wooden boxes nailed shut, labels faded, contents forgotten. They are treasures buried not in earth, but in bureaucracy. And you wonder, how different might our understanding of history be if every crate were opened, every shard examined, every fragment heard? Scientists still argue whether out-of-place artifacts truly rewrite history or simply highlight gaps in our knowledge. But the possibility is intoxicating. One misfiled tablet, one overlooked figurine, could shift timelines by centuries. Entire civilizations could be restored to memory by the contents of a dusty drawer. You place the carved stone back gently, closing the drawer with care. The hum of the light seems louder now, as though the room itself is speaking. Every drawer you pass feels like a sealed story, waiting for breath. And then in your imagination you hear it, a chorus of whispers, faint but insistent. They are not in words but in presence. Each artifact hums with its own echo. A pot once held water for a forgotten village. A shard once carried firelight across a hearth. A figurine once stood on an altar where prayers rose. They are not silent, not truly, they are waiting. You step back, letting the chorus fade into the background of your mind. You realize that unknown civilizations may not be buried deep under oceans or deserts. They may already be here, hidden in the basements of museums, sleeping in drawers overlooked by tired eyes. Civilization is not only lost in disaster, sometimes it is lost in paperwork. As you leave the room, the bulb flickers once, and you imagine the artifacts sighing in relief, as though glad someone noticed them, even briefly. You close the door softly behind you, carrying with you the sense that history is not a single neat book. It is a library full of unread pages, half-sealed drawers, unopened boxes, and somewhere in those shadows the voice of an unknown civilization waits to be heard. The heavy museum door closes behind you, and the air changes. It feels sharper, brisk with debate, like the buzzing of a lecture hall where minds wrestle with mysteries that refuse to sit still. You imagine yourself stepping into a room filled with scientists, each voice raised just enough to overlap the others. Charts cover the walls, data sprawls across screens, and in the middle of it all lies the question, what do we make of the evidence that does not fit? Mainstream fact insists that science thrives on skepticism. Every claim must be tested, every anomaly prodded until it yields to reason. Archaeologists, historians, geneticists, they argue fiercely, not to silence mystery, but to keep truth intact. One declares that the Antikythera mechanism is proof of remarkable Greek ingenuity, nothing more. Another suggests it may be evidence of technological traditions far older, resurfacing briefly before vanishing again. The debate grows heated, yet beneath it lies shared wonder. How could something so advanced exist when it did? You listen to another argument unfold. A group points to genetic evidence of ghost populations mingled with early humans. Some say these ghosts prove lost branches of humanity we never found. Others warn the data may be artifacts of error, misread signals in ancient DNA. Scientists still argue whether these fragments represent unknown peoples or only statistical noise. Their voices clash like waves against rock, steady, relentless. And then, on the far side of the hall, a quiet voice rises. It belongs to the cautious skeptic, the one who reminds the room that extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. The skeptic points out that floods happen everywhere, so of course many cultures have flood myths. The skeptic notes that parallel invention explains why pyramids rose in both Egypt and Mesoamerica, not contact, just convergent solutions to similar problems. The skeptic insists that out-of-place artifacts are better explained by mislabeling, contamination, or imagination. The hall bristles. Some nod, relieved by simplicity. Others shake their heads, unwilling to let mystery dissolve so easily. And here you stand, listening, feeling the pull of both sides. Skepticism comforts with order. Wonder tempts with possibility. Mainstream history has always moved this way, not in straight lines, but in arguments, in revisions, in sudden upheavals followed by calm. The discovery of Troy, once dismissed as pure myth, forced scholars to reconsider Homer. The unearthing of Göbekli Tepe, older than agriculture itself, upended timelines of civilization's birth. Each time science resisted, then adapted, then redrew the map. The quirky truth is that resistance is part of the process. Without it, every wild claim would be accepted. Yet with it, some truths take centuries to be believed. Imagine the archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann insisting Troy was real when others laughed. Imagine the first excavators at Göbekli Tepe realizing their site was 12,000 years old, while colleagues doubted until radiocarbon confirmed it. Scientists still argue, and through their arguments, knowledge crawls forward. You walk among the scholars, though none seem to notice you. Their words rise like sparks, lighting the air with clashing interpretations. A young researcher suggests that some South American ruins may predate the Inca by millennia. An elder counters that erosion can mislead, carving false ages into stone. Another insists that astronomical alignments at megaliths prove intentional design. Yet another says coincidence is inevitable when countless stars fill the sky. The room hums with tension but also with life. It is in this friction that progress breathes. You step closer to one table where an artifact rests under glass, a fragment of carved stone shaped into something almost mechanical. One scholar calls it a tool for weaving, another a ritual object, another a remnant of something we cannot yet name. Their arguments swirl, but the stone remains silent. It does not care who is right. It waits for time to catch up. You realize that science is not the enemy of mystery, nor is mystery the enemy of science. They are partners in a long dance, one leading, then the other. Skepticism prevents us from chasing illusions, while curiosity prevents us from settling too soon. Unknown civilizations may remain hidden, not because science denies them, but because the evidence is incomplete, waiting for the right eyes, the right tools, the right generation. The debate grows louder, and you close your eyes. You imagine the arguments as waves on a shore, crashing, retreating, crashing again. Over time they shape the coast, carving truth slowly, patiently, without haste. Scientists still argue, and they always will. It is in their nature, and perhaps in that endless arguing lies the very hope that one day the unknown will finally be seen. You open your eyes and step back from the hall. The voices fade into echo, leaving only the quiet thrum of thought inside you. You understand now. Knowledge is not a straight road, but a circle of firelight, where ideas are thrown into the flames and tested by heat. Some burn away, some endure, and some wait in silence until the world is ready to listen. The night outside is cool as you leave the hall. Stars wheel overhead, silent as ever, and you smile realizing that every argument you heard, every clash of voices, is part of the same human impulse, the desire to know, to remember, to connect with civilizations that may have walked this world long before us. And as you breathe deeply, the quiet returns. The unknown has not vanished. It simply waits, patient as stone, until our arguments catch up with its truth. The echo of the lecture hall lingers as you step into open air again. The voices of scholars fade, replaced by the sound of waves rolling against a vast unseen shore. The salt tang fills your lungs, and the horizon stretches so wide it feels as if the sea is swallowing the sky. You stand on the edge of a cliff, peering out over an endless expanse, and realize that the ocean itself is a kind of library, a library that keeps its books closed beneath a restless cover. Mainstream fact reminds you that more than 2/3 of Earth's surface is ocean, and that over 90% of its depths remain unexplored. Beneath those waters lie mountains taller than Everest, canyons deeper than the Grand Canyon, and plains larger than continents. And somewhere within those hidden landscapes are the ruins of coastlines where humans once walked. When the Ice Age ended, seas rose by hundreds of feet, drowning settlements, forests, and perhaps entire civilizations. The memory of those losses may live on only in myths of floods and vanished lands. You close your eyes and imagine walking along a shore 12,000 years ago. Villages cluster near the water, their people fishing, carving, singing. Behind them, fields stretch into fertile plains. Then, as centuries pass, the ice melts, rivers swell, and the ocean creeps inland, swallowing homes, farms, and temples. The people scatter, carrying their memories with them. The land itself vanishes beneath waves, and all that remains is the whisper of loss. Quirky evidence sometimes rises from the depths. Off the coast of India near Dwarka, divers discovered submerged stone structures that resemble streets and walls. In Japan's Yonaguni, massive formations lie beneath the sea, shaped so precisely some insist they are remnants of an ancient city. Off Cuba, sonar scans once hinted at geometric patterns 1,000 feet down. Though these remain unconfirmed, scientists still argue whether such sites are natural formations, the work of known ancient cultures, or traces of civilizations yet unnamed. The sea hides as much as it reveals. Shipwrecks become time capsules. The Uluburun wreck off Turkey, carrying cargo from distant lands 3,000 years ago, proving trade routes far wider than once believed. But for every ship uncovered, thousands remain buried under silt. If entire ships can vanish so easily, how much more can whole civilizations disappear beneath waves? You imagine diving into the dark. The water grows colder, the light fades, and shapes emerge. Columns encrusted with coral, steps leading nowhere, walls broken by centuries of current. Fish dart through doorways, and seaweed sways where banners may once have hung. You brush your hand along a carved stone, its symbols blurred by salt and time. It feels like touching a dream, one half remembered upon waking. Mainstream archaeology warns against overreach. Many supposed underwater cities prove to be natural rock formations. Others may be modest fishing villages exaggerated into legend. Yet even within caution, the truth remains. The ocean has hidden our history more effectively than time itself. It is not unlikely that real cities, real temples, real unknown civilizations lie drowned and silent, waiting for discovery. You stand again on the cliff, waves thundering below. The sea seems alive, restless, as though it knows what it conceals. Myths of Atlantis, Lemuria, Kumari Kandam, perhaps not literal, but perhaps not entirely false either. Civilizations may not vanish into the air. They sink, they drown, they wait. The quirky thought occurs, what if the ocean is not only a graveyard but also a vault? In its depth, oxygen is scarce, sunlight absent, processes slowed. In those conditions, wood, cloth, even writing might survive, sealed away in darkness. Imagine clay tablets lying intact on a seabed, libraries preserved in silt, statues still upright beneath the tide. Scientists still argue whether our current technology can ever reveal such secrets, or whether they will remain forever beyond reach. As twilight deepens, the sea reflects the sky in endless silver. You feel small before it, as every civilization must have felt, yet you also feel its pull. Humanity has always been drawn to the water, to sail it, to map it, to dream of what lies beyond. Perhaps this is why so many myths of unknown civilizations place them in or beneath the ocean. The sea is both barrier and mirror, concealing the past while reflecting our longing to know it. You listen to the waves and hear them differently now. Each crash is like a sentence, each retreat a pause. They are telling a story, one that no single person can fully hear. You imagine the ocean whispering, "I hold what you have forgotten. I keep safe what you have lost. When you are ready, come and see." You step back from the cliff, the sound of waves still echoing in your chest. The ocean's hidden memory follows you like a shadow stretching into the night. You realize that unknown civilizations are not gone. They are submerged, waiting for the day when light and breath will finally reach them again. And as you prepare to rest, you picture yourself drifting under gentle waves, sinking slowly into a world of silence and ruins, carried by currents through corridors where civilizations once thrived. The sea holds you softly, as it has held countless memories, and for a moment you belong to it too. The roar of the ocean softens, fading into a steady hush, until you find yourself walking upward, higher and higher, into the embrace of mountains. The air grows thin, crisp, tinged with pine and stone. Each breath feels lighter, each step slower, as though the earth itself is reminding you of its scale. And then you reach a plateau where boulders rise in deliberate formations, some shaped into walls, others into markers that stand against the sky. These are mountains that remember. Mainstream fact tells you that ancient peoples across the world built observatories high in the hills. At Machu Picchu, the Intihuatana stone aligns with the sun at solstice. At Chanquillo in Peru, a row of towers marks the rising and setting of the sun across the year, functioning as a calendar more than 2,000 years old. In Britain, Stonehenge aligns with the midsummer sunrise, its builders reading the heavens through massive stones. Mountains became temples, calendars, and bridges between earth and sky. You pause and watch the sun sink toward a horizon framed by peaks. Its rays strike a notch between two stones, lighting the ground where you stand. Was this intentional, you wonder, or coincidence? And then you notice another notch, and another, each guiding the sun at different times of year. The mountain is not silent, it is keeping time. The quirky truth is that such alignments appear across continents. In the Himalayas, shrines sit precisely beneath star paths. In North America, ancient mound builders oriented their earthworks to lunar cycles. In Africa, Nabta Playa, a stone circle older than Stonehenge, aligns with the rising of Sirius. Different peoples, different landscapes, but the same impulse to anchor the cosmos into stone. Scientists still argue whether every alignment is intentional, or whether some are accidents magnified by our pattern-seeking eyes. With enough stones and enough stars, coincidences will emerge, but still, the sheer repetition across cultures suggests purpose. These mountains and monuments were not only shelters or tombs, they were memory devices, vast instruments for preserving knowledge. You sit on a ledge gazing down into the valley below. Clouds drift like rivers through the air, and you realize how perfectly mountains lend themselves to memory. Their silhouettes never change. Their peaks remain constant across millennia. To carve into them, to place stones upon them, is to ensure that meaning endures beyond flood or fire. You close your eyes and imagine an ancient ritual. Priests gather as dawn approaches, their breath white in the cold air. They watch the horizon waiting. The first ray of sunlight pierces a notch, illuminating a stone altar. The crowd murmurs, reassured that the calendar is steady, that planting season is near, that the heavens still guide them. Generations pass, but the ritual remains the same. The mountain remembers what humans forget. Mainstream archaeology explains such practices as natural extensions of survival. Farmers needed calendars, sailors needed navigation, rulers needed legitimacy from the heavens. But you sense something deeper. Perhaps those who aligned stones with stars were not only ensuring harvests, but preserving connection to an older wisdom, a wisdom they themselves inherited from civilizations even more ancient. The quirky thought arises, what if mountains themselves were chosen as guardians because they are indestructible? Temples fall, cities crumble, but peaks endure. By embedding memory in mountains, unknown civilizations may have ensured their whispers lasted long after their names were gone. Scientists still argue whether monuments like Machu Picchu were built by known cultures alone, or whether they incorporated older, inherited foundations. Some walls at the site differ in style and age, suggesting layers of memory built upon memory. You rise and walk to the edge of the plateau. The wind is strong, pulling at your clothes, and the valley spreads beneath you like a painted scroll. The silence is profound, broken only by the wind and the call of a distant eagle. Here, standing on stone aligned with sky, you feel as though you are suspended between worlds, earth below, heavens above, humanity in the middle, always reaching upward. As twilight deepens, the first stars prick the sky. They appear exactly where the stones seem to point, as if the builders intended for you, centuries later, to stand here and see what they saw. You exhale slowly, realizing that the mountain is not only a place, it is a memory device, a clock, a book written in granite. Scientists still argue over the purpose of each alignment, each notch, each standing stone, but the arguments matter less than the feeling you have now, that you are standing in the presence of memory itself. The mountain remembers not through words, but through stone and shadow, through the path of the sun and the rhythm of the stars. You sit down as night fully claims the sky. Stars blaze brighter at this altitude, free from city lights, their constellations sharp and vast. You feel the pulse of the mountain beneath you, steady, enduring, and as your breath slows, you realize you are part of this rhythm too. You are one more watcher in a line stretching back thousands of years, adding your presence to the memory the mountain keeps. The night is cold but comforting. The stones at your back are firm, ancient, unyielding. They cradle you as though you are part of their design, and in the hush of the high places you drift into rest, knowing that mountains do not forget, and that their memory has now become part of yours. The mountain wind fades, and you find yourself walking downhill into a circle of firelight. The flames sway, orange and gold, casting shadows that leap like dancers against stone walls. You settle near the warmth, feeling the air soften, the darkness beyond alive with crickets and owls. Here, far from cities, fire is not just comfort, it is memory itself. You realize that civilizations have always gathered around flame, and the fragile language of fire has carried knowledge across millennia. Mainstream fact reminds you that fire was humanity's first great tool, the gift that transformed survival. It cooked food, hardened tools, drove predators back, and extended day into night. Archaeological evidence shows controlled fire stretching back hundreds of thousands of years, with hearths discovered in caves once inhabited by Homo erectus. Fire marks the threshold where survival became culture, where gathering sparks became gathering stories. You watch the sparks rise into the night, each one a fleeting star. Around the fire you picture a circle of ancestors. Their faces glow, eyes reflecting flame, voices weaving tales. For them, the fire is not only heat but a stage, a teacher, a bridge between generations. This is how knowledge survived before writing, not in books but in words carried by firelight. The quirky truth is that even after writing appeared, oral traditions remained stronger than ink in many places. Myths, songs, chants, genealogies, all recited by fire. Some Aboriginal Australian songlines may preserve memories of landscapes drowned over 10,000 years ago, describing coastlines now hidden beneath the sea, passed in whispers by flame. These stories became living maps. Fire was not just warmth, it was archive. Scientists still argue whether oral memory can preserve details accurately across thousands of years. Skeptics say stories mutate, shifting like smoke. Yet mounting evidence suggests that certain oral traditions do indeed encode real geological events, from volcanic eruptions to tsunamis, preserved across countless generations. The fire made memory resilient, burning repetition into ritual. You lean closer, letting the heat brush your face. The flames crackle like syllables. A storyteller raises their voice, recounting a myth of a great bird who carried fire down from the sky. Another tells of Prometheus, who stole flame from the gods. Different cultures, different images, yet all share the same heartbeat. Fire as gift, as theft, as sacred inheritance. Mainstream archaeology shows how fire reshaped society. The hearth became the center of the home, the village, the temple. From campfires to oil lamps to eternal flames, light guided gatherings. But beneath these practical uses you sense something more. Fire was a language, delicate and impermanent, yet powerful enough to shape civilizations. You watch as one elder adds herbs to the flames, sending fragrant smoke upward. It is an offering, a prayer, a message rising to the unseen. The children beside them listen wide-eyed, absorbing not just the story but the ritual, the rhythm of life carried in flame. This is how unknown civilizations may have survived. not in monuments but in firesides, in the fragile yet enduring thread of memory. The quirky detail flickers. Some archaeologists believe that fire itself may have been used as a signaling system across landscapes. Beacons on mountaintops, torches on cliffs, guiding travelers or warning of danger, light as language, long before satellites blinked in orbit. Scientists still argue whether all fire beacons were organized networks or spontaneous inventions, but the thought lingers. Perhaps entire civilizations once spoke to each other in flames, stretching across horizons. You lean back, staring into the dark beyond the circle. The fire at your feet seems small compared to the night, yet you realize its power. It binds you, calms you, connects you to ancestors who sat in exactly the same posture, staring into exactly the same dance of flame. The fragile language of fire needs no translation. It is understood by every human who has ever lived. The night deepens. Sparks drift upward, vanishing into stars. You feel your breath slow, your heartbeat steady, as though syncing with the fire's rhythm. Around you, whispers of lost civilizations murmur in the crackle. They did not vanish entirely. They live here, in this fragile circle of flame, in the stories repeated until they became the bones of memory. You close your eyes, the warmth brushing your skin. The fire speaks softly, reminding you that fragility does not mean weakness. Sometimes the most delicate things endure the longest. A song, a ritual, a whisper carried by firelight. And tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you know that the language of fire still burns in you, fragile but alive. The flames recede behind you, their warmth lingering like an ember in your chest. You step out into cool night air, and beneath your feet the earth crunches with fragments of pottery, shards of colour peeking through the soil. You kneel and lift one, a curve of clay, painted with a spiral that winds inward like a galaxy. Around you more shards lie scattered, half buried, forgotten by time. Patterns in the dust. Mainstream fact tells you that pottery, textiles and carvings are among the most enduring windows into ancient life. They reveal not only utility but artistry. Stories embedded in pigments and lines. Archaeologists read these fragments the way you might read sentences from a torn book. Incomplete but still alive, a shard of pottery can reveal trade routes through its clay composition. A weaving pattern can show cultural continuity. A carved motif can map the reach of myths across continents. You brush dirt from the shard in your hand. Its spiral is familiar. You remember seeing something like it etched into stone at a distant ruin, and before that, woven into a textile in a museum case. And even before that, painted on a cave wall you passed in your dreams. Spirals, zigzags, diamonds, suns, motifs repeating across oceans, across centuries, as though humanity kept returning to the same symbols. Here is the quirky truth. Scholars have long debated whether such patterns emerge independently in different places, or whether they spread from a single ancestral culture. Spirals appear in Neolithic Europe, in Mesoamerica, in Oceania. The same with checkerboards, with concentric circles, with depictions of hands and stars. Scientists still argue whether these are simply universal human instincts. Everyone sees spirals in nature after all, or remnants of an ancient symbolic language once shared by civilizations now lost. You rise and walk among the fragments. Some shards are painted with suns, their rays stretching outward. Others show animals stylized into patterns. Snakes, birds, jaguars, fish. You imagine the hands that painted them, steady, practiced, repeating designs taught by elders. Perhaps those designs meant more than decoration. Perhaps they were codes, visual prayers, or lessons passed through imagery. You bend to pick up another shard. Its surface shows a pattern of interlocking diamonds, and suddenly you recall a fabric you once saw from a remote Andean village, still woven with the same design. Thousands of years separate the two, yet the pattern persists. It is as if culture moves not only through words but through shapes, enduring like genetic code. Mainstream archaeology acknowledges such continuities. Motifs can travel with migrations carried in memory, repeated by hand, but you feel the weight of possibility. What if some patterns are older than migration, older than nations, older even than known history? What if they are fingerprints of a civilization so ancient its only legacy is these scattered repetitions? You kneel again, arranging shards into rough circles. The designs align loosely, forming what could be a map or a wheel. You imagine ancient artisans doing the same, fitting pieces together, telling stories with patterns. Around them, children watch, absorbing symbols before they can even write words. The patterns become part of their memory, their culture, their identity. The quirky surprise is how such designs often echo the cosmos. Spirals like galaxies, dots like starfields, zigzags like lightning. Did ancient peoples instinctively mirror nature, or were they recording knowledge of the sky in symbols? Scientists still argue whether prehistoric motifs were abstract art or coded astronomy. But as you arrange shards beneath your hands, you feel they are both, beauty and knowledge, inseparable. The night grows cooler, you breathe in the scent of dust, and with each inhalation you feel as though you are breathing the breath of forgotten artisans. Their whispers cling to the fragments, waiting for you to notice. You look around and realize that unknown civilizations may not have vanished completely. They survive in patterns, in designs repeated so often they became invisible, woven into our rugs, painted on our pottery, carved into our jewelry, sung into our chants. You lie back on the ground, shards scattered around you, and stare up at the stars. Constellations twinkle, and you see them as patterns too, dots connected into stories. Perhaps ancient artisans saw the same, translating sky into clay, repeating symbols until they spanned continents. The universe itself may have been their inspiration, and their memory lives on in spirals, diamonds, suns and stars etched into dust. Scientists still argue, but the patterns remain. They whisper that memory is not always written in books or carved in monumental walls. Sometimes it is painted on a shard, woven into a cloth, carried in a motif so common you overlook it. And yet those patterns connect you to lives long past, to civilizations whose names you do not know, but whose hands you can still feel in clay and fibre. You close your eyes, and the shards around you glow softly in your mind, like embers scattered in the dark. Patterns in the dust, patterns in the stars, patterns in your own thoughts. Perhaps they are all one pattern, repeating forever. The shards fade back into the soil, and you walk onward until the ground beneath you hardens into cobblestones. The street stretches ahead, lined with walls that seem both familiar and strange. The air smells of dust and rain-soaked stone, and there is a hum beneath your feet, the hum of a city alive with footsteps. You lift your eyes and see modern buildings rising high, their glass catching the twilight. But as you look closer, you notice something unsettling. Beneath the pavement, beneath the shops and houses, lie older walls, older streets, entire layers of civilization stacked one upon another. Mainstream fact tells you that nearly every great city of today rests on the bones of those that came before. Rome is built upon Rome, Istanbul upon Byzantium, upon Constantinople, upon older villages stretching back into prehistory. In Mexico City, beneath the bustle of traffic and neon signs, lie the temples of Tenochtitlan, and under those, traces of earlier people, forgotten yet not erased. Civilization builds upward, always upward, layering history like pages glued together in a single book. You pause before a construction site where the earth has been cut open. Exposed in the trench are bricks, pottery, even fragments of statues, remnants of a city that once thrived centuries ago. Workers pass by quickly, eager to build the future, but you linger. For you, these stones are whispers. They murmur that unknown civilizations may not be distant mysteries, but neighbours lying directly beneath your feet. The quirky truth is that many discoveries happen by accident. A subway tunnel uncovers an ancient road. A new basement reveals a burial ground. Entire neighbourhoods are mapped only when modern projects cut into older layers. Beneath Paris lie Roman baths. Beneath London, Viking settlements. Beneath Naples, Greek catacombs and aqueducts. Scientists still argue whether some of these hidden layers represent direct ancestors of the visible city, or entirely separate peoples whose presence was overwritten by time. You imagine peeling back the ground like sheets of paper. Today's streets vanish, replaced by medieval markets. Peel again and you stand in Roman forums, hearing merchants call across stalls. Peel once more and Bronze Age huts appear, their smoke curling into dawn. Peel further still and you find mud brick villages, stone circles, fire pits glowing in the dark. Each layer is alive, stacked upon the other, each with its own heartbeat. The present city floats like a ship above an ocean of memory. Mainstream archaeology knows this layering well. Sites like Troy reveal 9 distinct levels of settlement, each destroyed, abandoned or rebuilt. At Çatalhöyük in Turkey, houses were built directly on top of older houses, creating mounds that record centuries of continuous life. The earth beneath our cities is not empty. It is crowded with the ghosts of civilizations, each waiting to be heard. The quirky detail presses deeper. Some ancient walls are incorporated directly into modern ones. In Athens, cafes stand on foundations of classical temples. In Jerusalem, apartments rise from Crusader stones, themselves built upon Roman blocks, themselves laid on Bronze Age walls. You might sip coffee without realizing your chair rests on the labor of thousands of forgotten hands. Scientists still argue how much of these foundations belong to civilizations we know, and how much to ones we have yet to recognize. Are the oldest stones at certain sites the work of cultures we already named, or were they inherited from predecessors too faint to trace? The debate continues, but the evidence is undeniable. Civilizations do not vanish completely, they become the ground beneath us. You walk further, listening to the hum of the modern city. Cars pass, lights flicker, voices echo in alleys. Yet beneath it all, you hear a deeper hum, the murmur of layers, the breath of buried streets. You imagine walking down into them, step by step, through trapdoors of time. With each descent, the language changes, the architecture shifts, the smells of cooking fires or incense replace the exhaust of today. You realize you are not standing on a single city, but on a chorus of them, all speaking at once. The air cools as night settles, and you find yourself at a plaza. People walk across it without noticing the stones beneath their feet, but you kneel and touch them. Some are newer, smoothed by centuries of footsteps. Others are older, rougher, their shapes irregular. Beneath even these lie more, hidden entirely. You press your palm against the surface and feel warmth, as though the stones themselves carry memory. Mainstream historians remind you that urban layering is both practical and inevitable. Floods bury streets, fires destroy buildings, wars topple empires, but people return, rebuild, and reuse, raising new lives on old foundations. The result is a city that is not one age, but many. You lean back and look up at the night sky. Stars shimmer above towers, but your thoughts drift downward, not upward. You imagine unknown civilizations lying still beneath your world, their walls unmarked, their names forgotten, their voices muted, yet they are not gone. They are the roots of your present, invisible yet essential. As you close your eyes, the modern city fades into layers. You drift downward through streets and temples, through houses and hearths, through forgotten songs echoing in the dust. Civilization beneath civilization, memory beneath memory. The ground itself is alive, and tonight it carries you into dreams of those who walked here long before. The city layers dissolve behind you, and now you walk into the vast stillness of a desert. The air is dry, carrying the faint scent of dust and salt. Sand stretches in every direction, rippling like an ocean frozen in motion. As the wind shifts, dunes whisper against each other, and here and there stones break the monotony. Pillars half buried, walls crumbled, outlines of streets swallowed by centuries of drifting grains. You realize this desert is not empty. It is full of forgotten worlds. Mainstream fact assures you that deserts were not always barren. Once, the Sahara itself was green, lush with rivers, lakes and grasslands where hippos, giraffes and humans thrived. Archaeologists have unearthed rock paintings of swimmers, boats and animals, dated thousands of years before the desert hardened into sand. Civilizations bloomed where now only wind roams. Entire cities may lie hidden beneath dunes, lost simply because the earth changed its face. You kneel and brush sand from a stone carved with faint symbols. Its edges are worn, but the mark of human hands is unmistakable. For a moment you glimpse a thriving settlement. Houses of mud brick, markets shaded by reed canopies, canals guiding water from distant springs. Then the vision fades and the desert resumes its silence. The quirky truth is that satellite imagery has revealed buried structures beneath the Sahara, geometric outlines invisible to the naked eye, yet clear from above. Some researchers believe they are remnants of forgotten cities or trade routes that once connected Africa to the wider world. Scientists still argue whether these patterns are ancient human designs or simply natural rock formations mistaken for walls. The desert guards its secrets well. You walk further and the heat shimmers like a veil. Mirage-like images dance at the horizon, towers, gates, streets filled with people. Were they once real, or only dreams conjured by longing eyes? History whispers of places like Yuba, the Atlantis of the sands, said to have flourished on Arabian trade routes before vanishing beneath dunes. Excavations have uncovered collapsed settlements that may match the legend. Though debate continues, the desert is a trickster. It preserves and destroys at once. Bones can last millennia beneath its dry surface, yet entire cities can be erased overnight by a single storm. You picture caravans moving across the expanse, carrying salt, gold, and stories. Their trails vanish as soon as the wind stirs, leaving no mark for archaeologists to follow. Memory itself seems to scatter like sand. Mainstream archaeology admits that deserts are among the hardest places to study. Shifting dunes conceal, erode, and mislead. Yet discoveries continue. Nabta Playa in Egypt, where stones arranged in circles suggest astronomical knowledge thousands of years old. Abandoned forts along ancient trade routes in Central Asia, entire caravanserais revealed by erosion. Each finding hints that deserts once connected worlds rather than dividing them. The quirky idea arises. Perhaps some myths of vanished civilizations are simply memories of these green ages, when deserts were fertile. Stories of lands swallowed may not always mean oceans. Sometimes they mean sand. Scientists still argue whether certain flood myths actually disguise tales of desertification, when fertile lands dried and people scattered. You climb a dune and sit at its crest. The desert rolls out beneath you like an endless scroll, silent except for the hiss of wind. You realize how easy it would be for a civilization to vanish here, swallowed not by violence but by time itself. Buildings collapse, covered grain by grain, roads disappear, rivers dry, and all that remains are fragments of stone, faint etchings, whispers buried under shifting seas of dust. The stars rise above the horizon, sharp and unblinking in the desert night. You lie back against the sand, warm from the day's sun, and gaze upward. The constellations seem closer here, their patterns sharp against the dark. You imagine ancient desert peoples watching the same stars, aligning their monuments with Orion, Sirius, and the Pleiades. Perhaps their knowledge is still here, written in sand, waiting for someone patient enough to read it. Scientists still argue, but the desert endures. It holds its memories tightly, refusing to give them up easily. Each grain of sand once belonged to a mountain. Each dune shifts like a restless tide, and beneath it all, civilizations sleep. As your eyes grow heavy, you feel the sand embrace you. It is not barren, it is a library written in dust, its volumes sealed away. And tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you hear the desert's whisper, "I keep what you have forgotten. When you are ready, I will tell you again." The desert sands fall away like an hourglass emptied, and you find yourself in a twilight meadow where silence feels heavier than stone. Grass sways softly, a river glimmers under the moon, and the night hums with crickets and owls. Here, far from ruins and monuments, you finally sense the weight of all that has been forgotten. Civilizations rise and fall, stories bloom and fade, but what lingers most is absence, the quiet space left behind by memory erased. Mainstream fact reminds you that history as we know it is a patchwork, a quilt stitched from fragments. Archaeologists admit we have uncovered only a sliver of human experience. Less than 1% of potential evidence may ever have survived. For every Egypt, every Mesopotamia, countless cultures dissolved with no lasting record. Entire peoples have been reduced to a shard, a footprint, a scattering of bones. The story you inherit is not the whole story, it is simply what time chose to spare. You lie back in the meadow watching stars bloom across the sky, and you wonder how much is missing. The quirky truth is that even now entire chapters of humanity may lie undiscovered beneath jungles, under oceans, or buried in deserts. The Amazon has revealed geometric earthworks, visible only from above, hinting at societies once vast and organized. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey stunned archaeologists when its carved pillars, older than Stonehenge, suggested levels of culture far beyond what textbooks claimed for its time. Each new discovery rewrites the map, reminding us that the past is never finished. Scientists still argue whether there were civilizations more advanced than we acknowledge, erased so thoroughly that only myths remain. Atlantis, Mu, Lemuria, names that shimmer between legend and memory. To mainstream eyes they are fiction, yet the possibility remains that their seeds grew from something real, some echo of people who thrived before vanishing utterly. You rise and walk to the river's edge. The water glitters, carrying the reflection of stars. You cup your hands and drink, and in its taste you feel time itself. The same water cycled through clouds, rivers and seas since before the first village was built. Civilizations may vanish, but the elements remain, patient and eternal. The grass at your feet, the wind on your cheek, the stone beneath your step, They have seen it all. They keep memory even when humans do not. Mainstream history reminds you that forgetting is not only loss but necessity. Not every story can be carried forward. Some must fade to make room for new lives, new voices. Yet you sense a paradox. Even when forgotten, civilizations leave traces, subtle and unshakable. A myth, a motif, a ritual repeated with no one remembering its origin. You yourself may practice customs whose roots stretch into eras unnamed. The quirky thought lingers, what if the most enduring legacies are not monuments or languages, but feelings? Awe beneath the stars, fear of storms, reverence for fire, love of rivers. These emotions are unchanged across 10,000 years. Scientists still argue whether culture evolves endlessly or whether some human truths remain constant. But here, standing in the meadow, you feel continuity in your bones. The night deepens, fireflies flicker, glowing like scattered memories. Each one brief, yet together they form a constellation of light. You watch them rise, thinking of lost civilizations glowing just the same, appearing, shining, fading. Their brilliance was real, even if only for a time. Their absence is not emptiness, but transition. You breathe deeply, the meadow cradling you like a gentle hand. In this final quiet, the journey through ruins and oceans, through mountains and deserts, folds into a single truth. Civilizations may vanish, but their echoes remain. In stone, in story, in silence, and in you. By remembering, you keep them alive a little longer. Your eyes close, heavy, soothed by the hum of night. Grass whispers against your skin. The stars above burn like eternal witnesses. Sleep gathers around you, warm and soft, carrying you through the silence of forgotten worlds. You drift, not alone, but among countless voices, countless memories, countless civilizations that once shaped the world and still linger, unseen, in the dark.